A very good afternoon. Today, we are going to discuss about National Hazardous Waste Management Strategy. Why we need to study Hazardous Waste Management Strategy? Failure to properly manage hazardous waste can have significant acute and long-term negative effects on human health and the environment. It can contaminate surface water, groundwater, and soil, land. It can contaminate all these areas. It can also lead to costly fines, litigation, and shutdown of different businesses, operations, manufacturing units. Regardless, health and safety consequences. In this National Hazardous Waste Management Strategy, have some objectives. That first one is the effective management of hazardous waste to avoid environmental pollution and adverse health effects due to its improper handling and disposal. The second one is an appropriate strategy for regulatory bodies, generators of hazardous waste. Its recycles, and operators of facilities to minimize, recycle, and treat and dispose of leftover hazardous waste in an environmentally sound manner. Then to facilitate implementation of action plan brought out in National Environmental Policy in 2016 on management aspects of different hazardous waste, and to fulfill obligations under the convention, Basel Convention. The Basel Convention on transboundary movement of different hazardous waste, including their minimization, environmentally sound management, and active promotion of transfer and use of cleaner technologies. The proposed actions in National Environmental Hazardous Waste Management Strategy. These are proposed actions: inventory of hazardous waste generation, waste avoidance and waste minimization at source, reuse, recovery and recycle of hazardous waste, e-waste, and safe disposal of hazardous waste, and setting up common treatment plants, different storage and disposal facilities, and instant transportation of hazardous waste. In this first one, inventory of hazardous waste generation. Currently, There are about 30,000 industries generating hazardous waste, about 60 million tons per million in our country. Since industries change their products, processes, and capacity of production, and new industries get establishing periodically, updation of inventories also required in production manufacturing units. It should be made mandatory on the part of industries to report the different changes, additions in hazardous waste generation, and setups taken no reduced generation in their production units. As per the hazardous waste management regulations, and industries are required to store hazardous waste for a period not exceeding 90 days. Every manufacturing unit should not store their hazardous waste, should not exceed 90 days. And they shall maintain proper records related to sales and transfer and storage and the recycling and reprocessing of different waste. The data should be maintained by the industries. State Pollution Control Board, PCB, has extended the stipulated period. The waste could be recycled or reused or disposed of in captive and common treatment plants. Common treatment, storage, disposal facilities available in the state. The inventories, end of the life, consumer products such as e-waste are also required to manage. Waste avoidance and waste minimization at source. In the hierarchy of waste management, waste avoidance and waste minimization have to be attempted first. The determination of information and technological options should be continuing and exercise based. Promote implementation of recovery of resources such as solvents, other reagents, and byproducts, as well as regeneration of spent catalyst in the time frame only. The third one is the reuse, recovery, and recycling of hazardous waste. Industrial sector or industries should explore the options and opportunities of reusing, recovery, and recycling of hazardous waste in an environmental manner. Establishment of waste exchange centers should be encouraged to provide the information on waste, and promotion of the reuse, recovery, and recycling technologies which upscale the quality of the resource recovery. Incentive of reprocess with sale of the art facilities to meet the guidelines of the state and central pollution control boards. Beyond the state and central pollution control boards. In the states, SPCB, in the central CPCB, monitoring the solid waste, hazardous waste management. And introduce payback scheme as part of extended corporate responsibility in case of lead acid batteries. And develop system for channelizing the waste containing toxic metals for recovery. Mercury from thermometers and fluorescent tube lights and cadmium from batteries. Another one is e-waste. Another proposed action is e-waste. The recycling of e-waste is required to regulated due to the presence of hazardous constituents in the component of waste electrical and electric assemblies. The state government should encourage e-waste recycling projects under the public-private partnership mode. The next proposed action is safe disposal and hazardous waste. The waste which cannot recycled or reused, safe and environmentally sound disposal should be adopted depending on their waste category. Depending on their waste category only, should be disposed with safe, environmentally sound disposal. Design and operation norms of disposal facilities should be strictly followed as per the guidelines of the CPCB. The guidelines formed only by the CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board. And the supervision of such facilities by consult the state pollution control boards during the construction stage is required to ensure quality of construction as per the guidelines. The disposal site construction guidelines given by CPCB. Next, another proposed action is setting up of common treatment and storage and disposal facilities. Currently, 12 states have operating common hazardous waste management plants, treatment, storage, disposal facilities, TSTF. These are maintaining only 12 states in the country. In addition, 35 notified sites covering other states are at various stages. The various stages of development in the construction of disposal facilities. In view of the difficulties encouraged in identifying the suitable sites, setting up treatment storage facilities, disposal facilities should be considered within industrial estates only. The state governments may consider providing financial support matching the central subsidy. The state government providing the financial assistance to maintain the facilities, disposal facilities. And next, interstate transformation of hazardous waste. Based on the mutual consultations and agreements between the state governments, interstate movement of various hazardous waste should be permitted. In particular, to take care of difficulties faced by the some states in the development of storage facilities, TSDF facilities, such as not having viable quantities of hazardous waste, particularly the SPCB should develop online tracking system for movement for hazardous waste from generation to disposal, or recovery, or recycling stage. Should have proper develop online tracking system for this hazardous waste management. The National Hazardous Waste Management Strategy. Hazardous waste, bulk of which is generated by the industries, can cause environmental pollution and adverse health effects. Its effective management with emphasis on minimization of generation of recycling, reuse, taking into account of economic aspects. Therefore, it is essential with this objective, it is felt necessary to have an appropriate strategy for the regulatory bodies. The generators of waste and recyclers and operators of the particular facilities to minimize recyclable and dispose of hazardous waste in an environmentally sound manner. Various actions taken for environmentally sound management of hazardous waste in India. This includes establishing regulatory and institutional framework, preparation of different technical guidelines, development of individual and common facilities for recycle, reuse, recovery, the treatment and disposal of hazardous waste, inventory of hazardous waste generation, and identification, assessment of different dump sites for the purpose of preparing remediation plans and creating awareness among the various stakeholders. These activities need to be explained and reinforced and strengthened. The objective of The objective of this strategy is to reach the goal zero disposal of hazardous waste. Zero disposal of hazardous waste, adopting a holistic approach encompassing reduction at source level, reduction at source, reuse, and recycle and recover. In that order, through infusion of cost-efficient, innovative technologies, process, and practices help in minimize the hazardous waste. Further, the management of end-of-life consumer products having hazardous constituents, different hazardous constituents, such as used lead batteries, waste electrical and electronic equipment, must give primary to reuse, recycling, and the recovery process. The hazardous waste, which is not amenable to reuse, recycling, and recovery, has to be subjected to physicochemical, biological treatment, and incineration or disposal in the secured landfills. The strategy also addresses the issue of the import of recyclable, recoverable, and reusable hazardous waste, not only to meet the growing needs of the present situation. National Environmental Policy. The policy, National Environmental Policy 2006, established with the different aspects, the management aspects of hazardous waste, which includes public-private partnerships, develop and implement strategies for cleanup toxic and hazardous waste, an online monitoring system for movement of hazardous waste, legal arrangements, public-private partnerships, develop and implement viable models of public-private partnerships for setting up and operation of landfills and incinerators and other appropriate technologies for the treatment of waste and disposal of toxic and hazardous waste, both industrial and biomedical. These are on payment by users, taking the concerns of local communities into account. Next, develop and implement strategies. To develop and implement strategies for cleanup of toxic and hazardous waste, dump legacies, in particular industrial areas, mines, and reclamation of such lands for future sustainable use. Online monitoring system by survey and develop a national inventory of toxic hazardous waste, dumps, and an online monitoring system for movement of hazardous waste. Strengthen the capacities of industries, institutions responsible for monitoring and enforcement in respect of hazardous waste and toxic waste, and strengthen legal arrangements and response measures for addressing emergencies arising out of transportation, handling, and disposal of hazardous waste as a part of chemical accidents regime. And give a legal recognition to strengthen the informal sector systems of collection, recycling of various materials, in particular, enhance their access to finance and relevant technologies. In Basel Convention India, India being a party to Basel Convention and transboundary movement of hazardous waste. It is required to fulfill its objectives regarding control, reduce transboundaries movement of hazardous waste. Other objectives of the convention include prevention and minimization of generation of waste. Their environmental is sound management and active promotion of the transfer and use of cleaner technologies. It is all about Basel Convention. Next one is regulatory framework. To regulate management of hazardous waste generated within the country as well as export or import of such waste. The hazardous waste management rules 1989 were noticed under the EP Act 1986. Any waste which by virtue of any its physical, chemical, or reactive, toxic, and flammable, and explosive or corrosive, with these characteristics causes danger or likely to cause danger to health and environment, whether alone or when in contact with other other waste materials and substances has been denied as hazardous. These rules were amended. Hazardous Waste Management Rules 1989. The rules were amended in 2008 to bring a greater clarity to classification of hazardous waste by linking generation of waste, the waste streams to specific industrial processes. Simultaneously, threshold levels of concentration of specific hazardous constituents in waste were laid down in between hazardous and other wastes. For regulating imports and exports, waste had been classified as either banned or restricted. The producer of the generation of recycler or reprocessor with environmentally sound management, facilities for processing waste categories, such as used lead batteries, non-ferrous metals, and used waste oil are the best examples. The new rules titled Hazardous Waste Management Handling and Transboundary Movement 2008. Recycling of e-waste has also been addressed under these rules 2008. Categories of hazardous waste. This strategy encompasses different categories of hazardous waste: industrial waste, date expired products and discarded products, e-waste, and hazardous waste from demolition, and used lead batteries, used lead acid batteries. The industrial waste, hazardous waste generated during production, such as rejects or process residue or byproduct, spent chemicals, different catalysts, hazardous dust collected from air pollution, devices, and sludge arising from waste treatment plants. Next, date expired products such as obsolete pesticides and medicines, and discarded fluorescent bulbs and tubes containing mercury, the used batteries, and hazardous waste demolition, including ship breaking activities and used oil and different acid batteries, lead acid batteries. Other types of hazardous waste not included in this strategy are radioactive waste and biomedical or infectious waste, which are covered under the separate relevant regulations. The high volume, low effect waste, such as fly ash, slags from operations, excluded from this category of hazardous waste. However, management of different waste strategies, these waste shall be as per the guidelines issued by the regulatory authorities from time to time. The regulatory authority is the CPCB. These guidelines should encompass utilization of these waste to maximum extent. The hazardous waste generation. Hazardous waste generation. The generating industries hazardous waste has been prepared by the state pollution control boards in the states. Pollution control boards or pollution control committees in the respective union territories. Currently, there are around 30,000 industries generating hazardous waste. Already we discussed in the introduction, generating hazardous waste of 6 million tons per annum. The inventory has also brought detailed information on quantum of waste terms of recyclable, reusable, and landfillable and incinerable components. Such information facilities better planning of common facilities for treatment and disposal. The experience of industrially developed nations indicates that 1% increasing in the gross domestic product GDP leads to 1 to 3% increasing in generation of hazardous waste. Giving in fact that GDP growth in India is rapidly accelerating. It can be reasonably projected that hazardous waste generation in the country would increase. Since industries do change their products, processes, or capacity of production, as new industries get established, there is a need to periodically update inventories by the authorities like state and central pollution control boards. Besides, it should be made mandatory on the part of industries report changes, report inventories, and additions in hazardous waste generation. Steps taken by the industries report to the authorities, reduce generation of waste per unit of production. As per the hazardous waste management rules, industries have to store hazardous waste properly, and the authorization issued by the state and central pollution control boards. The waste recycled either has to be reused or disposed in captive amount or in common treatment, storage, and disposal facility. If available in the state, are incinerated in a captive incinerator, if it's own, and having incineration facility based on type of waste. And components of hazardous waste management strategy. There are many components in the hazardous waste management strategies. First one is waste avoidance and waste minimization at source level. In the hierarchy of the waste management, waste avoidance and waste minimization have to be attempted first. A close look at the process generating hazardous waste to incorporate feasible modification in process with different technologies and plant practices, we can minimize the hazardous waste at source level. Dissemination of information and technological options for waste avoidance and minimization. Whenever switch over to cleaner processes involves substantial investments and import of machinery, import of technology, suitable financial incentives in form of rebate in customs duty. All these sort need to be considered. In a chemical industry, in particular, assessment of cleaner technologies needs to be taken up. In major segments such as pesticides, dyes, and bulk drugs, and their intermediates. In all such industries, wherever laboratory scale trials have been completed, setting up pilot projects, demonstration of plants needs to be encouraged through suitable incentives. This would enable speedier adoption to cleaner technologies by industries. Next, reuse, recovery, and recycling of hazardous waste. It is the second hierarchy of waste management. Reuse, recycling, and recovery of useful resources from waste. In the order, MOEF, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, may therefore consider constituting dedicated waste specific tasks. For example, recycling of non-ferrous metal waste such as zinc, brass, used lead acid batteries, copper oxide, etc., offers attractive options for resource recovery. The current gap between demand and supply of lead, zinc, and copper, as well as projected widening of the gap due to rapid increasing in demand arising from the growth of various sectors, various manufacturing units and services as compared to primary production of metals. Recycling is energy efficient and environmentally friendly, hence need to be promoted. All these things. The recycling of used lubricating oil is another example of resource conservation. Disposal is the least priority in waste management. It is the hierarchy from prevention to disposal. Prevention need to be taken first level. The disposal is the last level in the hierarchy of hazardous waste management. Next, e-waste. E-waste such as components of electrical waste and electrical assemblies comprising accumulators and other batteries and mercury switches and activated glass ray tubers and capacitors are the best examples. It is also required to be regulated due to the presence of hazardous constituents in the particular materials. The guidelines in this regard have already been issued, so ensure environmentally sound recycling of e-waste. Disposal of hazardous waste. Safe disposal. Waste which cannot be reused or recycled has to be disposed in environmentally sound manner depending on the waste category, physicochemical or biological treatment or secured landfilling and incineration or any mode of safe disposal and environmentally sound disposal should be adopted in the process. And another thing, design and operation norms of such facilities, either captive or common, should strictly follow the guidelines which framed by the Central Pollution Control Boards, the monitoring is agencies, State Pollution Control Board. Supervision of such facilities during the construction stage would necessary to ensure the quality of construction and monitoring of disposal facilities also necessary in this process. The common facilities shall invariably equipped with laboratory facilities to verify the waste characteristics and decide upon treatment and disposal options, including secured landfilling or incineration. Setting up of common treatment storage and different disposal facilities. Currently, there are many common hazardous waste management treatment plants available. In that, 12 disposal facilities in 12 states in operating stage. In addition to this, 64 sites have been identified, 35 sites have been notified. The notified sites are at different stages of development. The annual capacity of this treatment storage disposal facility range from 10,000 tons per annum to 1.2 lakhs tons per annum, with an operating of lifespan about 15 to 30 years. The common facilities, including integrated facilities, have to be planned. Polluter pays principle, although at the initial stages, a certain level of assistance from the state governments could significantly accelerate the process of setting up of these facilities and also ensure their viability in the initial years. It is a vital. Several state governments have made available land and concession rates for setting up of these facilities. It is the form of financial support matching the central subsidy. For economical viability of such common facilities, the quantum of waste to be disposed is undoubtedly the single most important factor in the process. Considering the urgency to set up the common facilities and also imperative to make them viable, the transformation could account of a significant portion of disposal cost. In case of landfills waste, location of this transport, storage and disposal facilities should therefore close to the source of the generation. It should be established near the sector, developmental sector of industries. In view of these difficulties encountered in identifying suitable sites, setting up of treatment, storage and disposable facilities, should be considered within the industrial estates only. The capacity of integrated waste management facility should be decided based on the availability of hazardous waste in the state or the nearby area. Such a facility should compromise a secure landfill, arrangements of treatment, an incinerator, and a laboratory capable of comprehensive analysis of different wastes and arrangement for transportation and handling of waste, including supporting infrastructure. Such a facility could also have arrangement for recovery, resource, recycling, reprocessing. During the operation and for a stipulated period of post-closure, liability for any damage caused shall rest with the operator of TSDF. A separate fund should be created by the facility operator for post-closure monitoring and liability incidents taken to deal with the liability arising due to the calamities, different calamities. Use of cement cleans for hazardous waste incineration, incineration of high calorific value, of hazardous waste in cement kilns. It is subjected to implementation of suitable safeguards. Incineration of high calorific value. The spread of cement industry in the country across the states makes this option particularly attractive. Surge from industries, petrochemical industries, and oil refineries, and paint industries, as well as spent solvents and solvent recovery residues from the pesticide and bulk drug industries, particularly suitable for this purpose. With specific calorific value, with high calorific value. In the cement lines, the high flame temperature around 2000 degrees centigrade, high calorific volume, high material temperature of around 1400 degrees centigrade, and the large residence time of the around 4 to 5 seconds ensure complete combustion of all organic compounds. Acid gases formed during combustion are neutralized by the alkaline raw material, and non-combustible residue including heavy metals get trapped. However, it may become necessary to carry out some blending and processing of waste before they are suitable for use in the cement kiln. Central Pollution Control Board conducted field trials for different waste categories and also arranged to carry out monitoring of hazardous waste and hazardous air pollutants. As the field trials of CPCB have indicated, compliance of notified emissions norms for hazardous waste incinerators, use of hazardous waste, including ETP, sludge from dyes and dyes remedies, intermediates, paint sludge, residue and refinery sludge as supplementary fuels in cement kilns. It needs to be promoted. In this view of process, respective state pollution control boards may issue authorizations and necessary approvals to set up these facilities, to set up these hazardous waste incineration facilities. Use of incinerable waste for recovery, for energy recovery in other industries may be explored by the CPCB. In case of paint sludge, successful use of after reconditioning a primary coating has been in practice in some of the automotive industry. Such reuse of hazardous waste is preferable option for coincineration and should be encouraged. Next one, illegal dump sites and remediation. In the absence of common facilities, illegal dumping of hazardous waste is reported in several states. Surveillance, both by the enforcement agencies and the industry associations, need to be stepped up to avoid illegal dumpings. Even after waste disposal facilities have become operational in some states, the problems persisting. Remediation and rehabilitation of dump sites should be based on scientific assessment of contamination of soil, contamination of groundwater, based on the modeling projected and damage. To approach for site remediation would vary modeling from site to site, depending on the nature of the pollutants in the dumping site, the future damage potential of the sites, and remediation cost also consider. The remediation strategy would include excavation of waste at site, shifting to the nearest disposable facility, or establishing a dedicated secure landfill. The site remediation measures may be taken up to prevent further spread of contamination through the contaminant measurement. In any case, polluter pays principle has to be strictly enforced, which means that the polluter has to reinstate or restore the damaged or destroyed elements of the environment at his cost. To take care of remediation where the polluters are not traceable, a dedicated fund should be created by the pollution control boards, SPCB. Strengthening of infrastructure of regulatory bodies, mantle of hazardous waste management. Regulation is primary on the state pollution control boards at field level. The Central Pollution Control Board and state governments may support boards by adequate funding for effective implementation of hazardous waste. Further training and awareness programs for the boards and staff need to be organized periodically. For effective discharge of different waste, the boards have to be strengthened in terms of manpower, equipment, and instruments and other infrastructure facilities, the state and central government should support, should give financial assistance or funding. The custom department plays an important role in regulating import of hazardous waste in our country. Appraisers carrying out inspection of hazardous waste received need to be trained to pick up respective samples. In addition to sampling techniques, appraisers should be made aware current hazardous waste regulations, documentation requirements. Equally important is the need to upgrade laboratory facilities in all parts of entry, in all parts of the processing areas. Difficulties faced by the customs authorities in distinguishing between the used oil and waste oil serves. Lack of different laboratory facilities for analysis of trace organics such as PCBs could enter the result in holding up of supplies, sometimes long periods. And it leads to illegal imports of waste oil under the grab of finance. And trained manpower and equipment for analysis of important heavy metals and trace organics should be taken up, and with time bound plan prepared for their grading. Till such time, all parts of the upgraded both terms and of equipment and training and laboratory personnel staff, outsourcing of laboratory related to work laboratories recognized under the EP Act. It may be considered. There should be regulation on waste characterization, classification of hazardous waste, and classification of hazardous waste rules and amendments, etc. Next, disposal of date expired drugs and pesticides. There are significant quantities of date expired drugs and pesticides laying in various states, which need to be disposed of. The options available are to have this reprocessed whatever possible by the industry which is supplied by them, or appropriately incinerate them either through dedicated incinerators of individual industries or through incinerator available with common facilities. In order to deal with the such hazardous waste, interstate transportation as well as its disposal facility as per above stated options should be permitted by the concerned state governments, and SPCBs. The two are to have these reprocessed wherever possible by the industry, or to incinerate them with dedicated incinerators for individual industries, or through incinerators available with common facilities. And handling and management of hazardous waste. During ship dismantling, various waste containing hazardous constituents are handled during ship dismantling. This includes waste oil, asbestos sheets, asbestos containing panels, tiles, paint chips, asbestos containing panels, chemicals. Some of these materials can be used directly, such as asbestos panels, unused chemicals. Some can be sold by recyclers, and others need to be disposed in TSDF. What is TSDF? Transportation Disposal Facility. Adequate safety systems can be sold to recyclers. Adequate safety systems and procedures need to be adopted during dismantling and handling of these materials. Handling of this hazardous waste material in ship dismantling. These activities is required to be regulated through state boards and SPCBs and PCBs and factory inspectors as per the comprehensive code of the ministry. In the proposed actions, according to inventory of hazardous waste generation, the waste could either be recycled or reused or disposed of in captive or common treatment plant, common treatment storage disposal facility plant should available in the state, are to be incinerated, and the inventories of end of life consumer products required to be made. It should be made mandatory on the part of industries to report changes and different additions. And promote implementation and recovery of resources such as solvents and other reagents and byproducts as well as regeneration of spent catalyst at the time frame manner, and reuse, recovery, recycling of hazardous waste, establishment of waste exchange banks or waste exchange centers should be encouraged to provide information on waste and promote reuse, recovery, and recycling technologies, which upscale the quality of resource recovery, and incentive reprocesses with state-of-the-art facilities to meet the guidelines of the CPCB, and introduce paybacks scheme as part of extended corporate responsibility in case of lead acid batteries production, and develop a system for channelizing of waste containing processes, toxic metals for recovery, such as mercury from thermometers and fluorescent tube lights, and cadmium from batteries. And another proposed action, e-waste. The state government should encourage e-waste recycling projects under the public-private partnership mode. The recycling of e-waste is required to regulated due to the presence of hazardous constituents in the components of waste electrical material and electronic assemblies. Another promoted action is safe disposal and hazardous waste. For the waste which cannot be recycled or reused, safe and environmentally disposal. It should be adopted depending upon the waste category, design, and operation norms of disposal facilities should be strictly adhered. As per the guidelines of these central pollution control boards, the supervision of such facilities concerned with state pollution control boards during the construction stage is required to ensure the quality of the construction as per the guidelines of CPCB, including post-closure monitoring of the safe disposal and hazardous waste site. Setting up of common treatment, storage, and disposal facilities. According to the Government of India, currently only 12 states have promoting and operating common hazardous waste treatment plants. Only 25 operating these transport, storage, and disposable facilities. In addition, 35 notified sites, already we discussed about this. The notified site covering other states at various stages of the developmental projects. In view of difficulties encountered in identifying suitable sites, setting up of different treatment, storage, and disposable facilities should consider within the industrial estates should establish these facilities within the industrial estates because it may be posed to contaminate the other area while transporting. It may impact the other environment or other areas while transporting. So the setting up of TSDF should be established within the industrial estates only, within the factories only. The state governments consider providing financial support that should match with the subsidy of the centrals. A separate fund should be created for the facility operators for post-closure monitoring, and it deal with the liability arising due to the different calamities. The treatment, storage, and disposable facility shall encounter delineated hazardous waste catchments areas taking into consideration their distance from the generators and availability of waste. The SPCBs, state control boards, shall ensure that in a given hazardous waste catchments area, there are no multiple operating transport disposable facility. And another proposed action, interstate transportation of hazardous waste. Based on the mutual consultations of the governments or states, the agreement between the state governments, interstate movement of the hazardous waste should be permitted. In particular, to take care of difficulties faced by different states in development of the treatment storage facility, such as not having viable quantities of waste, hazardous waste particularly. The state pollution control boards, pollution control committees should develop online tracking system for movement of hazardous waste that from generation to disposal or recovery or recycle stage. The tracking system, online tracking system should be established. And use of kilns for hazardous waste incinerations. The field trials conducted already by the CPCB have indicated compliance of notified emission norms for hazardous waste incinerators, in particular cement kilns. Use of hazardous waste as supplementary fuels in cement kilns need to be promoted. Reuse of hazardous waste, however, such as in case of paint sludge, after reconditioning as primer or coating in some of automobile manufacturing units, which have been successfully demonstrated. It is a preferable option over co-incineration, and it should be encouraged. Now, another proposed action is illegal dump sites and remediation. To take care of illegal dumping and surveillance of both the enforcement agencies, CPCB and State Pollution Control Board. The enforcement agencies and industries associations need to be stepped up with illegal dumping sites, illegal dumping. To approach for site remediation of dump sites, it would vary from site to site, depending on the nature of the pollutants and future damage potential and remedial cost. It may be varied to site to site. The remediation strategy should focus on the polluter, pay principle, which needs to be strictly enforced. In such a case, the polluter has to reinstate or restore the damaged elements of the environment at his cost only. To take care of cases of remediation wherein polluters are not traceable, a dedicated fund needs to be created by the pollution control boards. That may be State Pollution Control Board or Central Pollution Control Board, or in union territories, they are monitoring with the pollution control committees. And another proposed action, strengthening the infrastructure of regulatory bodies. For effective enforcement of different regulations promoted by the regulatory bodies, CPCB and State Pollution Control Board and pollution control committees in union territories have to be monitored, have to be strengthened in terms of manpower, equipment, instruments, and other infrastructure facilities. The state and central governments may support the state and central pollution control boards need adequate funding from the state and central governments to trainings and awareness programs and periodically monitoring process. In cases of illegal imports of hazardous waste, that waste indicate need to plug the existing loopholes. The priority areas for action, including regulation with provisions in hazardous waste management handling rules, and trainings of custom department personals engaged in inspection and sampling and upgradation of custom department laboratories. And another important aspect we discussed disposal of date expired drugs and pesticides. To have these processed whenever possible by the industry which supplied them. Approximately incinerate either through dedicated incinerators of individual industries or through incinerators available with common facilities, treatment, storage, and disposable facilities in order to deal with such hazardous waste, expired drugs and pesticides. Interstate transportation